Next, from Springfield, representatives of Change Illinois and the Illinois Redistricting Collaborative hold a press conference along with state senators and representatives to discuss their support of the Fair Maps Amendment, which would combat gerrymandering. This runs about 25 minutes.
My name is Brad McMillan, and on behalf of Change Illinois and the Illinois Redistricting Collaborative, I would like to welcome you to the Fair Maps Amendment press conference. On February 10th, 2016, President Barack Obama came back to the Illinois General Assembly to give a reflective and inspirational speech on what needs to be done to restore our American democracy. One of his main points was to urge redistricting reform and to end the process of gerrymandering, where our legislative districts, quote, are shaped like earmuffs or spaghetti, end of quote. Obama then stated, quote, now this is something we have the power to fix. And once the next census rolls around and we have the most up-to-date picture of America's population, we should change the way our districts are drawn. In America, politicians should not pick their voters. Voters should pick their politicians. That was from President Obama, coming back to where he started his political career. With another 10-year census looming in 2020, new state legislative and congressional districts will be drawn in Illinois. Many of us in this room have been working tirelessly and passionately for over 9 years on trying to bring a constitutional amendment to Illinois voters to change our seriously flawed redistricting process so that fair maps are drawn to ensure competitive elections and expand minority representation. This is our 4th attempt. What we are asking for today is to urge that a vote be allowed in the House and the Senate on the Fair Maps Amendment. We need both chambers to pass the amendment by a 3/5 majority before the May 6th deadline to allow Illinois citizens to vote on this critical reform in November. The citizens of Illinois deserve a vote and deserve a direct say in their democracy. We must remember that under the U.S. Constitution and Declaration of Independence, that the people are rightfully the source of all governmental power. The Illinois Redistricting Collaborative is a very diverse group of civic, minority, reform, and business organizations representing more than 2 million Illinois citizens. We are very grateful for the bipartisan leadership of Representative Ryan Spain and Senator Julie Morrison in serving as the chief co-sponsors of the Fair Maps Amendment. Currently, we have 16 sponsors in the House and 13 sponsors in the Senate. Thanks to Senator Morrison, we have a subject matter hearing at 3 o'clock this afternoon in room 212. We already have 85 slip witnesses in support of the amendment and 0 in opposition. So we plan to make our voices heard very loud here today in Springfield. So now it's my honor and privilege to welcome to the podium Representative Ryan Spain.
Well, thank you, Brad, and thank you, Change Illinois, for leading this important initiative, all of your collaboration partners that are here. And it's not just the work that you're doing now. This is really years in the making. And I can remember 2 or so years ago, I was one of almost 600,000 people in the state that signed that petition that said, let's put redistricting reform on the ballot. And you can see with that number of people what a groundswell of support this issue has. Now, we know the rest of the story and the decision that was made by the Illinois Supreme Court. So today, we're here to talk about a different way forward, because the state legislature has the power to initiate the same process, putting this issue on the ballot for our November election, and in fact, an ability to go further in the type of remapping reform that we would do to make sure that voters are able to select their politicians and not the other way around. Our legislation today, House, Constitutional Amendment 43, Senate Constitutional Amendment 26, is modeled after legislation that was successfully passed in the House 2 years ago. So former Representative Jack Franks had a bill 2 years ago, almost to the date, that passed the House with 105 yes votes. And the idea was that we could make these changes initiated as the legislature to put this item on the ballot. So it can be done. If it was appropriate for the House to consider and vote on redistricting reform 2 years ago, it's even more so important that we do it today. The 2020 census is looming. It will soon be here. We have important decisions to make, and we have urgency to do it. Deadlines are coming up soon for the legislature to take action. So I urge my colleagues to continue forward on this important initiative, and we thank all of the partners that are really working to sound the message that it's high time, beyond time in Illinois, that we change the way that we draw our legislative districts and that we can encourage and incentivize more bipartisan cooperation so that we can work better as a state. It's now my pleasure to turn over the podium to our Senate co-sponsor, our Senate sponsor for this initiative, Senator Julie Morrison. Senator.
Thanks to all of you for being here today. What a coalition is standing behind us. That speaks volumes. For too long, politicians, not just in Illinois, but across the whole nation, have been the ones who held the reins and held the pen on where those districts were going to be drawn. I have filed this constitutional amendment number 26 that's going to take the General Assembly and the governor out of that process. As my colleague in the House said, politicians do not belong in this process. Members instead would be appointed to an independent commission by the Chief Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court and the most senior justice associated with the other party to create this commission. By doing this, we can rebuild the trust that we have lost with our voters in the state of Illinois. We can also start to rebuild the accountability that, again, has been misplaced in some times. SJR CA 26, the framework itself guarantees a commission that will be demographically, geographically, and politically diverse and representative of the entire state. In addition to that, there's going to be increased sunlight and transparency. A total of 30 hearings. 20 before the proposed map would be introduced and 10 after. 30 public hearings. Data also that is used in developing this map will be required to be shared with the public, as well as communications. We want the public not just to have an independent commission, we want the public to be able to understand and track what's going on and be able to participate in these very important hearings. This proposal is overwhelmingly popular with people in the state of Illinois. It's desperately needed, and I think would be a most welcome addition as we try to update and reform our election process in the state of Illinois. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kim Brisky, and I'm the Director of Communications and Public Affairs for the Small Business Advocacy Council. The SBAC is a nonpartisan organization committed to empowering small businesses through networking, education, and advocacy. We are proud to stand with the Illinois Redistricting Collaborative in support of the Fair Maps Amendment. Illinois has top-notch talent, educational institutions, infrastructure, and all the advantages of a world-class city, but our state still has a bad reputation when it comes to entrepreneurship. Specific arguments on policy aside, there is a more entrenched and damaging dilemma. Small business owners lack the confidence in their government due to their current redistricting process in which politicians choose their constituents. The impact of this mistrust is directly tied to the state's economic troubles. Entrepreneurs are reluctant to expand when they lack confidence in their government and the ability to weigh in on policies that impact their business. This is why small business owners of all political stripes have taken up the fight to end gerrymandering in Illinois. By fundamentally changing this process, by increasing transparency and the creation of an independent commission, we can work toward restoring faith in our elected officials and, in turn, empower small businesses to start, stay, and succeed in Illinois. And at this time, I would like to turn the floor over to Senator Laura Murphy, who's the chief co-sponsor of this important measure.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you all for being here. Thank you for all the hard work you've done to bring this forth. I'm supporting the Fair Maps Amendment because I believe fairness, not politics, should determine what our districts and the people that we represent. Redistricting reform is about fairness. It should be about keeping our communities together, to making sure that we have representation from minority communities and from all of our communities. And a fair map process will do that. Representative democracy, as you've heard today, only works when people participate. We know that we have lost the public's confidence in government, and that's throughout the United States. But here in Illinois, this can be our first step to helping regain that. When you provide a fair map, a fair and transparent process to how those maps were determined, I think that's the first step to restoring the public's confidence. So we are working with our colleagues, and I know that our colleagues in the House are doing the same, to ensure that we'll be able to get this passed. So thank you all for being here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David KOHN. I'm Executive Director of Public Affairs for the Union League Club of Chicago, and I'm honored to be here today to speak on behalf of the club and as part of this coalition and these visionary legislators in support of the Fair Maps Amendment. Since its founding in 1879, the Union League Club of Chicago has engaged in nonpartisan civic affairs advocacy and has been directly involved, in fact, in shaping our state's constitution. The club urged Illinois citizens to convene the 1970 Constitutional Convention, and one of our members, Sam Witwer, served as president of the 1970 CONCON and became known as the father of the Illinois Constitution for his role in drafting this foundational document. So the club deeply appreciates the gravity of altering our state's constitution, but we also recognize that there are times when amendment becomes necessary. The founding principles of our club include a commitment to maintain the civil and political equality of all citizens and to preserve the integrity of elections. That is why we support this effort to place the Fair Maps Amendment on the statewide ballot this fall. It is consistent with our core values. At the root of our democratic system of governance is the principle that government derives its authority from and should be responsive to the will of the people. That principle is damaged when legislative districts are drawn to protect incumbents, diminishing the voices of voters and discouraging candidates. It is damaged when, as a result of gerrymandering that creates safe seats along partisan lines, the majority of state legislative elections are uncompetitive, with incumbents facing little or no opposition whatsoever. It is damaged when districts designed for partisan advantage result in an increasingly polarized legislature, fueling the partisan divide and preventing the General Assembly from working together to address our state's most pressing needs. And it is damaged when gerrymandered districts dilute the impact and mute the voices of minority voters. For all of these reasons, the Union League Club of Chicago proudly supports the Fair Maps Amendment and urges the members of the General Assembly to present this vital reform to the citizens of Illinois for their consideration this fall. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Madeline Dubeck, Director of Policy and Civic Engagement for the nonpartisan nonprofit Better Government Association. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the Fair Map amendments. This legislation should be passed because it would bring the process of drawing the legislative maps out of the darkness of the back rooms and into the light of public scrutiny and participation. The Fair Map amendments create an independent and public commission, as has been described, just as has been done in California and Arizona. It creates a commission of 16 people who, as Senator Morrison said, are required to hold 20 public hearings before any map is proposed, and another 10 after a map is proposed, for a total of 30 hearings. The commission would also need to have its own website, and any and all communication and activities and data the commissioners use would be available to the public and conducted transparently. The commission would also be subject to the Freedom of Information Act and the Open Meetings Act, just as every other government body in Illinois is or should be. The legislation creates an independent and thoroughly open commission to draw maps with significant public input that would be a terrific step forward in rebuilding the trust voters ought to have in their democracy. When maps are drawn by partisan political leaders of either party, power is stolen from the people. Power, in fact, is even siphoned from lawmakers who have been subject to the same legislative leaders for many, many years in Illinois. When party leaders design maps, they work to consolidate their own power and to politicize the entire process, limiting voters' choices and voices. It's time to give Illinoisans a chance to try a different, open map-making process. Thank you.
I'm Bonnie Cox, and I have the privilege of representing the League of Women Voters of Illinois. You know, it was from the spirit of the suffragist movement that this idea for a civic organization that would look at public interest over partisan interest was born 98 years ago. Our league was actually founded in Chicago in 1920. I'm just going to share a little bit about the league's experience in all of these many years since we were founded with gerrymandering and our efforts to do something about it. Our most recent efforts, and our efforts really started in 1993, the state leagues, but our most recent ones have been in 2014 and 2016 as we passed petitions. And I am from Joe Davis County, from Galena, and our league would go and we would do presentations to community groups about what the proposed amendment would do, and we would ask people to sign that petition. And people thought it was a great idea, and they supported it, and they wanted this Fair Maps amendment. But it was always interesting, because there would be a couple people in the group who would say to me, "You don't really think this is going to happen, do you?" They will do something to keep their power. And it just was so indicative of this deep, deep disillusionment and cynicism and distrust in our state government. And it is so discouraging for a group that really is promoting active civic responsibility and understanding the role of each and every citizen in a democracy. And it's just deeply, deeply disturbing. So we now have this opportunity, and the legislature has this opportunity to put this amendment on the ballot this fall. It is the beginning, I believe, as many people said here, of a new trust in our government. I think it is the beginning of encouraging more people to run, because as these gerrymandered districts happen to protect the incumbents, people of the opposite party don't even run. Why? And then you just have this very polarized situation in this partisan gridlock occurs, and it just creates this ongoing distrust in the government and anger that people can't come together and find common ground to solve these very dire problems facing us. So, on behalf of the League and all of the citizens that we have gotten to sign that petition a couple of years ago, we so urge the legislature to put this amendment on the ballot. Democratic government depends upon informed and active participation of its citizens in government. The current redistricting process does not allow for that or encourage it. The proposed redistricting amendment will.
Morning, my name is Andy Kang. I'm the legal director at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago. Our mission is to build power through collective advocacy and organizing to achieve racial equity. Now in Illinois, there are over 750,000 Asian Americans, and we continue to be the fastest growing group in our state, largely due to immigration. And we spanned out beyond the city of Chicago and Cook County to the surrounding collar counties and suburbs. And so Advancing Justice Chicago has a strong interest in finding a long-term solution that ensures that the Asian American community, but Also, all communities of color are fairly represented in our state's maps. Now, to be clear, partisan gerrymandering or gamesmanship should play no part in our map-making process. It is just not a legitimate government interest under our U.S. Constitution. If passed and adopted, the Fair Maps Amendment would become the strongest protections in the country for the minority community. I need to restate that again. The strongest protections for any redistricting process in the country. 4 of the 9 criteria used to draw the maps in the Fair Maps Amendment are directly related to protecting and strengthening protections for communities of color. In fact, the Fair Maps Amendment goes even further than the Federal Voting Rights Act by allowing for what are called influence districts. This means that communities that have lost population or may not reach the threshold of a majority-minority district could still stay together in one district and really preserve and enhance their political power. And so, you know, you will hear in coming days, and you've heard some naysayers and opponents talk about their concerns for the minority community with this map, the Fair Maps Amendment. Those concerns are unfounded. When we look at the California experience, a very similar independent commission, all those same critiques were brought up, and what we've seen in the past few years is none of them have borne out to be true. So let's get this done now. Let's not wait for the Supreme Court and their decision. Let's not leave this up to a hat draw. Let's do the right thing right now for our state. Thank you.
We had Senator Connelly join us as well. If you want to say a few words.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Senator Mike Connelly from the 21st District, which is Western DuPage County. A few months ago, I was asked to sign on to a amicus curiae brief to the United States Supreme Court on the Seventh Circuit case out of Wisconsin, and I certainly did, and I was frankly somewhat surprised that I wasn't joined by more people because I think most of us in this room certainly supported the effort a few years ago to get 600,000 signatures on the ballot for a fair map. I was in the House of Representatives in 2010 when we last had a map, and my recollection was we threw out a fair map on the House Republican side, and my district was essentially a perfect square. And as far as partisanship, it was about 52-48 Republican, not a 60-40 or, you know, a 70-30 like you may see in other districts. I support this for any number of reasons, but number one is Iowa has this, Ohio has it, and guess what happens? Power flips between parties, and it creates collaboration. It creates an incentive to collaborate for you to stay in office. So I really give Senator Morrison great credit for her leadership on this, the League of Women Voters as well, and I hope by the end of today we can get a few more people on the resolution and bring this to the floor for a vote. And I thank you for the opportunity to say a few words.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.